everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Leadership Blend live podcast with your host, Ricardo Rice, and my co-host,
Simone Cherie.
All right, so we are back. How long? I feel like we've been gone for like 3 weeks.
We have. It's
Has
been
it been
a while.
3 weeks? I feel like we've been gone for like 3 weeks. That makes me feel some kind of way. But, I'm excited to be back and all that good stuff. And, yes, we do have a guest in the studio. So I'm going to shift it to him to let him introduce himself and tell you about him, and we will go from there.
All right. Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. J. Bush or James Bush, or lovingly called Dr. J. Whatever you want to call me is fine. Just don't call me broke. I am an adjunct professor of healthcare sciences. I'm the executive director of the Lizzie Porter Foundation, where we specialize in bringing healthcare services to underserved communities here in the metro Atlanta area. And I'm a full-time healthcare consultant and trainer with the Enthrive Corporation.
Incredible.
So if you hadn't put two and two together, that's what we're talking about today. We're talking about this whole healthcare system, what it looks like, what is it. You know we're going to bring it to you straight. We're going to give it to you in good layman's terms today. And that includes for me, too, because I got some questions myself about how this thing works. But we can't go straight into that because we got to talk about what is going on in the world today. Jesus, Georgia. We just turned blue, and now everybody's showing their tails. But, Simone, what's on the rundown?
So we're going to talk about that. The sine die was yesterday, so the Georgia legislature has closed for the year. There'll be lots of committees and other sorts of working task forces and groups going on over the summer, but lawmakers are part-time, and they get to go back to the rest of their jobs, and we get to kind of discuss and dissect what they passed this session, what they have not passed, and we'll also talk a little bit, not just about the voting piece, about some of the other reform bills that passed this legislature, the budget, which passed, and healthcare, I think, was a big piece of that, so that could be a good segue for us. But also going on nationally is, I should say internationally, is the live and televised Derek Chauvin trial after the viral video last year of the killing of George Floyd on the street. We are watching this and are now in day 5. I think as we speak, the second witness of the day has been called, and it's been a very interesting experience so far, and so we can at least kind of give an overview of that. I know there are a lot of folks who are not wanting to watch the trial for understandable reasons, but we could at least talk about some of the takeaways so far. So,
all right, well, let's get into this terrible voting debacle bill that happened.
Yeah, so HB 531, first of all, at the beginning of the session, over 70 bills related to elections and election integrity were introduced in our legislature, which is a huge amount. There's always hundreds of bills introduced every single year, but never so much as this. And prior to this session, all the politics leading up to the start of the session, I think, made it feel like it was a very long session, even though it's only 40 days technically. There was an election integrity working group that lawmakers were a part of for months leading up into the year. Lots of testimony from Rudy Giuliani and other folks at the federal level about Georgia's voting machines, about the voting process, about our Secretary of State. We talked a little bit about some of the ongoing investigations with regard to some calls that were made by our former president to our Secretary of State and to other officials in the state. So it's been a very big partisan, very big political battle.
It's been disgusting. Let's call it pull the crap from under the rug. It's been disgusting. And I'm not even. I'll let you get into what's in the bill, but I saw some of the stuff in that bill. And I'm just like, so this is what we're really doing. Like this, they're just blatant with it. Now I think that's the disgusting part. Now it's blatant. That's why people keep saying the whole Jim Crow thing. It's blatant. It's like y'all not even trying to hide y'all racist agenda or things of that matter. Y'all just doing it now. Just out in the open. This is like this is what we gonna do. Shifting power, all kind of foolishness. It's disgusting.
Well, a lot of people, it is confusing, period. Like, I think regardless of whether or not you believe that we need to crack down or to change voting provisions, it's a 98-page bill. There are 16 provisions ultimately that are going to go into law. But prior, and like what we were talking about, I think even a couple of months ago, this bill had so many pieces to it, and there were multiple pieces of legislation. There was, the banning on Sunday voting altogether. We talked about not only the no excuse absentee voting, but there was also criminalization of certain voting procedures, meaning assisting folks who needed assistance, or the water situation, which I think a lot of people don't understand.
Food
water and
in the
snacks.
line, yes.
Yeah. So, it was a much meatier bill and a much bigger bill. They cut down the deadlines for when you could register to vote, especially registering absentee. We used to have 6 months to get a absentee ballot if you wanted to vote by mail. They tried to cut that down to like 11 weeks or something like that. So lots of changes that would really make a big difference in terms of how easily you could vote. The biggest changes are that change in particular. You will have less time to request those ballots. You will have to provide ID with those ballots, which You didn't necessarily always have to before. If you were a first-time voter, you did, but not if you were just already registered. It is also illegal for election officials to mail out the applications, to all voters, which was like just automatically done last time. If you remember, you may have gotten 3 or 4 or 5. I think I got 5 at one point.
I think I did too. At least 3. At least 3 minimum.
Drop boxes will be changed. So each county had the ability to kind of put the drop boxes wherever they could afford to. The bigger counties had like 20 or 21. I think we said in Cobb there was 22. Now those will have to exist at specific voting locations, which obviously a lot of people were very frustrated about because they said, well, what's the point of a drop box if I have to go to the elections office? Mobile voting centers are essentially banned. Fulton County made use of those. Early voting has expanded in some small counties, but not in bigger ones. Offering food or water to voters waiting in line now does risk misdemeanor charges. Doesn't necessarily mean misdemeanor charges, but you do risk those. So that was a big piece of this. The biggest part is that there was, and I just want to talk about this bill as well, there was always a provision against wearing campaign material. So, like, for example, last year, you would not have been able to wear, like, a Biden T-shirt visibly in a voting location. And there was always, like, a 150 feet or some sort of perimeter against, campaign material, essentially advertising. Because, for whatever reason, that was always the case. Long lines have been a big complaint. We know that a lot of people have to stand on their feet for long lines, or in long lines struggle to do that. But the crackdown from Republicans on this had to do with the fact that the ACLU and the NAACP and Verified Action and all these other advocacy groups last year took the community by the hands and were like, okay, well, we've got to wait in these long lines. We want people to get out here, so we are going to make sure that there's snacks and that there's food, food and water. And this was, I think, sort of the Republican attack against that was essentially like, we don't want advocacy groups out here, and the frustrating part of this is that even though an individual may be working for one of those organizations, they could still just be a citizen. Like, I'm just a citizen, I'm just a member of the community. You would think that encouraging community, assistance or community togetherness would be a good thing.
It would have been if they were all Republicans. Then it would have been a good thing. We wouldn't be sitting here fighting 70 bills if they were all Republican.
Yeah.
So, let's be very clear about that.
The legislature also has more control over the state elections board. Secretary of State has been removed as a voting member of the elections board.
Well, that's not a bad thing.
Right. Well, the legislature can suspend county election officials, and then the runoff elections are going to happen a lot faster than they did before. So I think part of the biggest frustration, we talked about third-party funding, too, of elections, which I thought was an important thing for lots of different reasons. But at any rate, I think I would find this embarrassing, I think, if I was, and Republicans were very divided on this bill, period, for a very long time. And like our own lieutenant governor said that he didn't like it and that he wanted nothing to do with it. There were Republicans who did walk out when it was initially introduced back in the beginning part of the session. So it was a very contentious bill, and it did divide a lot of Republicans in the first place, in part because the president of the United States, who was then a Republican, essentially dragged our Republican governor and our Republican elections officials through the mud. And these are people who have been in the state of Georgia for years and years, who take a lot of pride in elections, who admitted, disappointingly that like the election was lost and that they hated that it was lost, but that it was lost, period, and that was it. And so the fact that there was this sort of infighting around what some of the rules are was just kind of ridiculous. So that is the law that has passed.
So let me ask this, because I did not realize, and this is my ignorance, and I shouldn't even be admitting this, but I will, because I want to show everybody I'm regular too, even though my undergrad was pre-law. I want to show my level of ignorance sometimes. I did not realize that the House and the Senate in Georgia are apparently Republican led.
Yes.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that.
Full.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't realize
that. And the executive branch, Republican-controlled state, period, yeah.
Huh.
Yes.
And that's been the case.
So this is why they advocate for voting in local elections. Because while we won nationally, many of the things that we know and love, like our health care, which we'll be talking about today, is controlled by the state. And that particular bill that you just brought up, that was passed in one day. She mentioned 98 pages. Some of y'all can't read 9 pages.
Okay, literally.
Yeah.
So,
literally.
And this is always a danger at the end of a session, at least in this, and I'm sure in every state, but in Georgia, the last week, because there's a 40-day cycle, right, that usually lasts between January and April. That last week is always a very funny week. A lot of bills that have been like sitting the entire time start to move. Things get amended. Things get like chopped off. Things get re-added and placed into other bills. This sort of closed door signing ceremony was a big matter of contention in the state of Georgia because one of our representatives, Park Cannon, was arrested. I don't know if you saw those headlines,
yes.
and charged with felony disorderly conduct, I believe.
For knocking on the door.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
Well, apparently it was obstruction of justice or something to that magnitude.
right,
What she's
yeah.
being charged. I'm like, how do we get here?
But
they can take over the White House, and we still trying to round them up.
Well, the biggest thing here too is just more that like passing a bill that quickly, like passing it as quickly as they passed it, the closed door
behind
sort of
this
signing
closed
ceremony.
door. And they was talking about the picture. Apparently, was a plantation picture in the background.
Yes.
Oh yeah, that's the thing. They said that was a picture of some plantation.
The optics were just disgusting for this, and like Democrats only picked up 2 seats in the state of Georgia, and they needed 16 for a majority. Yeah, it's 103 to 76 Republican.
So we need to
control.
focus our attention on that now. That's where the attention needs to go.
I mean, local elections are always important. I mean, for lots of different reasons, they're always important. So speaking of, the backlash for this bill had came to our corporations for quite a bit. Corporations have been very active and very vocal since the pandemic, I think in a new way. And we talked about this a little bit before the show that, corporations who always kind of made like blanket statements or nice little press releases when like big national events would happen had to do so much more. And like,
you
so
got to get off
many
the
of them,
fence.
Yeah,
You
so
have
many
to
of them
choose
were
a side.
taken to task and taken to trial. We saw Target getting just flamed for tweeting a little tweet about their stores getting defaced, and then just people just going in and realizing that you releasing a statement about George Floyd is not going to fly and is not going to be okay when you have no blacks in executive leaderships, and these are all the racial discrimination suits that your company's received, and this is the nothing you've ever done about it.
Well, I think that's the beauty of it. Like this whole last year has like opened some portal where black folks are really, I hate that term woke, but out of lack of a better word, that we're actually woke. Like this whole Delta CEO thing where they kind of were put money into it and the bill passed and social media was like, these are companies that put their money in this here. And we were like, that ain't acceptable. So now you see the CEO of Delta going back and forth with Kemp, and they were just like, no, we didn't know what was in the bill. We were lied to.
Yeah.
And then Kemp was like, no, you were not lied to. You went into this eyes open. So to see them go back and forth, it's where the money resides. At the end of the day, it's where the money resides.
Well, House Speaker Ralston David Ralston essentially was saying this, and he is a good House Speaker. However, they had Delta and a lot of other major corporations. I mean, Georgia's got Home Depot
Delta,
and Coca-Cola and all these corporations. So they were all kind of, I guess, a part of initial discussions, and their lobbyists were, and some of the really, really bad provisions that we talked about, especially like the Sunday bans and stuff, corporations were against then. However, once those got wheedled out and wheedled down, they were like, okay, well, there's nothing we can really, it's a Republican-controlled legislature. They're going to pass the bill. We think that the worst things are out of this bill, and so we're not going to, completely, obliterate the legislature for it. But once that happened, people were like, no, there's still all these problems with this bill. Like, why give people 2 months to get a ballot? Why do they have to be thinking about a ballot like, why can't you give them more time if we're trying to increase participation?
Because we're not.
Well, right.
Okay. Let's be very
or if we're
clear.
not trying to decrease participation or whatever. Like, so people were still very upset about that. And that's when companies said that and I like the way that Ed Bastian put this, the Delta CEO, we have had our position has changed. That's what he simply said. So the Republicans in the legislature were saying, you were here, you were fine with it, and they didn't appreciate that, and decided to try to threaten Delta with a couple $2 billion worth of a tax credit revocation. It won't pass because we're too close to the end, but just kind of a nod to say, well, we could.
Yeah, we can knock your bill out.
Yeah,
we will get these tax
we can
credits
give
that
it and we can
so
take
badly.
it away. But
I mean, it's literally like watching an episode of House of Cards on Netflix.
Yeah.
It's literally, you watch Frank, Wheel, and Deal, and you're like, and now I'm just like, God, this really is what this looks like. Like, they really do,
yeah,
do
it's
this
always
stuff.
very personal. It's always very sensitive. But positions do change. And I at least appreciate.
This is the same person that loves Jeff Bezos and
Jeff Bezos.
Zuckerberg.
Yeah.
This is what she does. So
I do.
this is you're looking to discuss.
And Georgia's the number one place to do business.
Positions didn't change.
Exactly.
Their positions didn't change.
They just got called on the carpet about it, and that's why.
That's fair.
Their draws are still the same.
That's fair. That's fair. But so here's my issue with this. I think personally is that even though they were part of those preliminary discussions, some of the groups, especially for Fight Action, and I think Southerners on New Ground and a few other folks, were posting all of the contribution amounts from all of these corporations to a handful of these Republicans, especially the ones behind those bills. And I hear that, but I also don't, in the same sense that even for my representatives and even for folks that are backing my bill, there is no stopping them from dropping another one, unbeknownst to me, that undoes like some of the provisions within this bill. A lot of people didn't expect this sort of anti-police defunding bill to come out at like 5% or so. That came as an immediate result of the conversations around defunding police, and the sheriff's associations putting a lot of their lobbying dollars behind it. So you don't always know what's coming from your representative. And when those contributions were made, which was before the session year, I'm not convinced that they saw this coming. I'm just not convinced they saw it coming. So to me, it's like, corporations are powerful. I want them to speak up. I want them to say something about it. I want them to make the legislators feel the fiscal impact of them not funding them and not putting them back in office. But I also don't give them credit for expecting these sorts of things to happen. I don't think they can always see it coming.
I mean, the guys talked about that Monday, the panel episode that's coming, that became the center of the discussion. Is corporate responsibility enough to kind of give these companies a pass as long as they're giving $50 million to the Negro College Fund? Is that enough? I mean, or do we need to hold their feet to the fire in every scenario? So, okay, well, with this, okay, well, y'all have lobbyists and stuff. They should be bringing you correct information to let you know what's going on step by step. Is it enough that this bill passes, now you backpedaling, and on the side you gave, we're going to give Spelman and Morris Brown College, we're going to give them $125 million. Like, is that enough to even the keel, or do we really need to hold their feet to the fire? Because technology happens in a second. So you can be aware of these things if you really want to be.
It's not about technology always, though. Like, people have their own agendas, and even lawmakers have their own agendas, and we work on a clock, so they know that on day 39 at 6 a.m. they can do this. One of our senators was just saying that as these conversations first happened, one of the first election integrity hearings when 531 was dropped was at 6:30 a.m. And she was like, never in my 10 years have I seen a 6:30 a.m. committee meeting. I've never seen. So people talk in the dark all the time, unbeknownst to you, they do. So, but
it's just disgusting.
Let's just move, because I know we've got
in the room where it happens.
Okay,
right in the room when it happens.
Right. Just disgusting.
When before we shift, so the Derek Chauvin trial, have you been watching that, Dr. J?
So I, like you, have decided to consume it via social media. So in small increments. I think we, and by we I mean me, and by me I mean Black folks. We have suffered enough mental trauma anguish from these incidences. So I try my best to spoon feed myself this instead of fire hose. So yes, but I saw clips of some of the witnesses. I will say, however, even though I only consume small portions, I think it is a necessity for these stories, for this to be in people's faces. Change did not occur until
we saw that debacle.
We saw that debacle, or in history terms, until good white folks sitting at home at 6:00 in the afternoon saw Black people getting beaten on Edmund Pettus Bridge. Yeah. So sometimes you have to see those things. So yes.
Yeah, that's a really important point, I think.
I'm not about to relive it, so I'm just like, you know what? This is one of those situations where I want the results.
And they do have to relive it every time they ask.
Literally, because they give you CNN give you the snippets. I have all those things coming to my phone, so I see the snippets. And I'm just like, this is terrible. I think one of the witnesses was like 9 or something.
Yeah, like 9-year-old girl.
She had to relive this. It's like, it's terrible. I get it, and they're gonna have to do it. But I'm like, do we really have to fight this hard? We watched this fool kill this man on TV. Like, I don't.
I mean, this is the process. This is the process.
Yes. Yeah, but now we want to really use the process, and they'll tell me sliding stuff through and do what you got to do.
But it is necessary to keep things in people's faces, because Americans have a very short attention span.
Yes.
All right. So if we don't keep it in their face, then it'll slide under the rug, and it'll be just like the school shootings. It'll be just another one of those, and we're gonna pray,
and we're gonna hope.
Well, listen, there's nothing wrong with praying.
I'm not
faith without works, but Simone.
Nothing wrong with praying.
But
it goes with works.
Where's the work part?
Exactly. That's we got to have some works with that too. We can pray. We still got all the mothers of Zion still around praying all day, every day. But the young folks got to do the work, the heavy lifting.
Yeah, glory.
That stuff you be doing on the hill.
Well, okay, but so this is the judicial system, right? So this is a little bit different because, and every jurisdiction is different. We have a couple elected officials that are partisan, like our district attorneys. But some places don't necessarily have elected DAs. Some places only have appointed DAs. And quite frankly, the judge, whether it's like a Superior Court judge, like in this case, those can run the gamut too. So this is kind of a question about like the independence of the judiciary and the unbiased nature of the judiciary, and quite frankly, the jury process, because most criminal cases don't go to trial. So we're watching a trial, which is already rare. It's like 3% of all cases that happen. This is and a police officer, which is even more rare, whether or not there will ever be charges brought to a police officer, let alone a trial. The jury's off camera for understandable reasons, but folks don't know. I'm just quoting this from the New York Times. There's a demographic mix in this jury. There's 3 black men, 1 black woman, 2 women who identify themselves as multiracial. We don't have any more info on that. 2 white men and 4 white women. Some are urban, some are suburban. They range from their 20s to their 60s.
Where we get 4 white women?
The 2 alternates are white women. There's
jury of your peers.
You don't know there's white people in.
Oh yeah, that
New
looks
York.
like that looks like him. Yeah, 4 white women. Yeah,
jury of your
soccer
peers.
moms. Yeah, that's
peers. Well, look, again.
What?
There are 6 people who are not white.
Yeah, but what kind? I gotta see these. What kind of black folks?
No,
are
you
they?
can't see them. It's security.
Oh, yeah,
what
true.
kind of black?
Like,
anyway,
what kind of black folks are they? Like, are they like?
You should be asking.
I'm just saying,
you should be asking what kind of white folks they are, if anything.
Hey.
But
well, yeah, but if we got 4 white women and 2 white men, and you got 6 black folks who are like
why you put black in
because
quotes?
if you got, and I'm just playing devil's
I
advocate.
put your black in
if
quotes.
What are you trying to say? Like Omarosa? Is that what you're trying to say?
You got 2 Omarosas
Well, you gotta
and
What would be the odds
Drag
of
her.
that?
Yes. Yeah, but I mean, you got to have at least 1 or 2 Shaquiras on there because he got down like that. You got 1 or 2 Shaquiras, a Takim, and then you can have an Omarosa and one of them. But I don't. That makes me very concerned.
And they did say that there's very few people allowed in this courtroom, and so but the reporters did say that during the first day there were a couple of the female jurors who just kind of like closed their eyes, and there did appear to be some tears at a couple different points in time. But there's pressure for a jury, like for internationally televised case, they have to keep these people anonymous, which I understand. One of the things that I was a little that the jurors did, the 300 potential jurors had to fill out a 14-page questionnaire that to answer about their views on policing, protests, race, criminal justice, and other issues.
I wouldn't have passed.
I would have taken it. I was like,
not.
I don't need this.
Maybe
I would
not.
have taken it.
I wouldn't have passed.
At least 10 of the 15 alternates had a somewhat negative opinion of the defendant already. A couple did say they had some positive views about police, but many said that they did believe the system was biased against black people. One of the potential jurors had a very favorable opinion of Black Lives Matter. Another had a very favorable opinion of Blue Lives Matter. So, again, this is the situation in which we have to think about the fact that all of this politics, all this media, it leaks into the actual system. So, like, when we sit back and we say, how did they not find George Zimmerman guilty of killing Trayvon Martin? How did they not find these people guilty? And what were these juries thinking? Juries are you and I and your cousin and your neighbor and your boss and your colleague. And what they think...
But no,
bleeds into.
But are they? Are they?
Okay, well, they're not you and I.
So you have to be registered to vote in order to, of course, participate on the on a jury. So we just up until Stacey Abrams
literally would not
that
be
is
registered
true.
to vote.
That is true.
So I'm not getting a jury of my peers because my peers, as mentioned earlier, is JJ and my cousin Blake.
True,
but
and Lil Peanut, he ain't about to be registered to vote because he got warrants.
My peers.
That's fair.
So my peers are now coming from North Fulton County,
East Cobb,
East
Cobb.
East Cobb
Soccer
County.
moms,
right?
Soccer moms and football, baseball coaches,
and that's very true. However,
who don't understand street rules.
But I hate to turn this into a "what are we doing" argument. But I do know many of my own skin folk who get those jury notices and immediately find a way out of it. They wriggle their way out of it the second they get a chance. If they're asked to go to the jury for any reason, because they are registered, they do qualify, they get out of that thing so fast. Something comes up, they got something to do, and they forsake that opportunity to participate in the justice process and to keep the next, black defendant from going to jail.
That's interesting that we shifted this way because that's another reason, now that you think about it, why they want to block this kind of stuff, because now everybody's registered to vote. Now you can be drafted for jury duty. It does lead into other stuff that we don't think about until y'all said that. I didn't even think about that.
But this is why these conversations are necessary. This is why when people say, I need you to vote, voting impacts so many other things aside from just the person that you're electing. If my vote, of course, that means I can sit on the jury of somebody who grew up in the same neighborhood as I, but didn't have maybe some of the chances that I had,
Right.
I now understand why, he robbed that store. Well, I have I'm still going to, so you're going to get charged.
Yeah, but we're not going to let you steal just for the hell of it.
Hold up, because I don't. But I mean, but now you have someone at least who can visually see you as I'm a peer. I can see you as a human and not an animal or being aggressive as
Yeah.
I didn't think about that.
One clip.
That was a takeaway from today's show. I didn't even think about that. That leads into the fact that now you can be drafted for jury duty.
And we have to remember this too, because the Ahmaud Arbery case was moved to Cobb County, right? So that jury has to be staffed. Keith Haring in Clayton County, who was gunned down by a young white woman who thought that he was breaking a law, is going to be in Clayton County. So if you are in Metro Atlanta area, these crimes that we've been reading about and watching about are touching us. That was a citizen's arrest crime. We just overturned that law. But if we want justice for Ahmaud Arbery, then that jury has to have people who get it. Yeah. And so again, in this season, even before this bill passes, not that it would change your registration anyway if you're already registered, but don't ignore those notices. Get on that jury. There is that next 20-year-old or 22-year-old black person who could be facing 10 years because you're not there. Yeah. So
come on through.
Let's move on.
All right, last thing, and then we can get to. That's what she does. This is why Simone's here. I don't think I introduced y'all. Simone, this is Dr. Bush. I'm sorry. We normally do that before the show, so I forgot because he got in here and we went straight to it. This is what she does. All right, so last thing, because we talked about immunity and cops, and we've been kind of sitting on that. Like, okay, we got to do something about this because they're just getting away with murder, literally. So we got to do something about this. New York City Council passes reform, no longer protects NYPD officers from being sued for their actions.
Good.
So now we're seeing some seeds being planted. Good. And I won't really get into it because the headline kind of speaks to it because we got stuff to talk about. But yeah, I was very happy when I saw it. I was like, good. Now we're making some headway because if one state passes it and it works, then other states start looking at it, and we have some president to say, hey, New York did it, and they're okay, and it works. We need to try it here. So I like that.
Not discrediting, of course, our wonderful men and women in uniform. I
agree.
Used to wear uniform
absolutely.
myself, and I respect their job. But
Same
it's
here.
probably one of the only professions where you can literally get away with murder and not be affected whatsoever. A teacher cannot go in and sexually assault a child or slap your child in the mouth, even though they're bad. Because as soon as you slap your little bad child,
Yeah.
excuse me.
Yeah.
I can't cuss.
I mean, it's fine.
Okay, my bad. But slap your bad child in the mouth, then of course you're fired. Nurses and doctors can knowingly do something wrong to you and then keep their license. I mean, real estate agents can't scam you and keep their license. Yeah. But I could shoot you point blank and say that you were being the aggressor and be back on the beat tomorrow morning.
Yeah.
Literally.
It's a good point.
This is a good place to start. All right, so let's shift to the subject of the day. Why Dr. Bush? I like the way that sounds, Dr. Bush.
Thank you.
Why Dr. Bush is here today? You should. I mean, you put in the work. You should. I need to finish mine, but Dr. Rice gonna have to wait.
Come on now. Come on to the dark side.
Exactly.
Ain't no waiting.
That's not. My hands are full.
Your hands are not full.
That's not the subject of the conversation today. So
it is today.
Well, that's not the subject of the conversation. We gonna keep moving. So all right. So let's start at the very beginning. Let's talk about Medicaid and affordable health care, which we call Obamacare. What are these things?
Education 101.
Yeah, like 101. What are these things? What do they mean? Why were they instituted? All that good stuff.
Okay, so in the United States, we have what's called an employer-based healthcare system. All right. So what that means is if you have a job or if you have a good enough job in layman's terms, you can then qualify for healthcare benefits. There is a portion of the population who may be retired or underemployed, meaning you don't get at minimum 40 hours a week. If you're under 40 hours a week or you're a part-time employee, then your employer doesn't have to supply you with insurance. And so in those instances, if you are underemployed or you are beyond the age of employment, you qualify for government plans like Medicare and Medicaid. So that's what those two are. All right. The problem with that is these programs are often state ran. So like Medicaid. I'm just hitting the mic.
We got you.
It was fine.
All right. Medicaid helps supply insurance or insurance premiums to those who are underemployed. Okay, they fall into a certain population that is technically indigent. They don't. They ain't got no money.
I was about to say we talking about poor folks.
There you go.
Poor folk.
They poor
folks.
All right. The problem with it being state ran is that if you are in maybe a liberal state or a blue state, then they traditionally believe in everyone having access to it. So the Medicaid window is open. All right, you get some insurance, you get some insurance. All right, but if you are in a lovely red state or with a state that maybe has Republican-led Senate, House, and of course governor, like we are, then you fall into that gap where they try to minimize or lower the threshold for that. So then you get big gaps in coverage and leaves a lot of people out in the cold. In 2010, there was a wonderful president, a fabulous president. All right,
who was he?
Right, yeah, who was he talking about?
I don't know. I ain't good at history and stuff like that. But on March 25th, in 2010, he passed the Affordable Health Care Act. The Republican Party at the time felt that because of his name, they would tag it Obamacare. He took Obamacare and flipped that thing. You know
okay, because he was like that. I think he's talking about that Obama man.
He said,
Obama man.
So I do care.
Yeah,
okay.
I do care. And so the Affordable Care Act took and it helped fill in that little gap there. So if I have Medicaid that for my state, but there's a whole bunch of people who don't qualify because they make too much money. Now you work at the Waffle House part-time, but you make too much money for Medicaid now. So you make too much money for Medicaid, but you don't qualify for any of the other programs. Then the Affordable Health Care Act fills in that gap for those individuals. It allows them to get insurance when they can't get insurance from their employer because remember they're part-time employees or they don't make enough money and they make too much money. They're still poor. They make too much money for the state-ran Medicaid programs.
How is that not an oxymoron? Like, I don't make enough, but I make too much, which is probably maybe $2 difference. Like, how do we get... Okay, carry on.
Voting.
Facts.
Voting.
Facts.
How do we get every answer? Voting.
Facts.
Okay. So that's what those programs are. But it all stems from us having a not so good healthcare system overall, and because it's employer-based system.
All right. So what's the difference between Medicaid and Medicare? Is there a difference? What is the difference?
Yes. So just think old and young. Okay. Medicare is for older. Typically the older or disabled populations qualify for Medicare. Your grandmother, me mom, big mama them.
That's the only reason I know about it. I used to live with my grandma.
They qualify for Medicare, but or maybe your disabled uncle, he qualifies. I ain't talking about nobody. I'm just saying. You know.
I mean, look, we talking about black folk. Let's be very real.
But if you are like my cousin Kui, she used to have, she used to be at the McDonald's, but they closed. They fired her. So but she got 7 kids. She qualifies for state-ran programs like Medicaid.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So can I ask, because we live in America, this is, I think, a good introductory question. I don't know anything else. So, like, what does it look like elsewhere? Like, what other option is there other than just healthcare that's covered by good jobs, as they say? Good jobs.
It's so nice.
Can you paint a picture?
Well, we talking about
what
outside of the United States, or we talking about
outside of other places? Like, what's the alternative, I guess, to this?
So the biggest push that so again, remember that we have an employee-based system. So if I have no job, African Americans have a higher unemployment rate than anybody else.
Of course.
Unemployment means you ain't got no job. No job means no insurance. All right. Even when you do get a job, some of you guys are working jobs that are, of course, part-time positions. You don't get 40 hours a week. No 40 hours a week. No mandate for your employer to offer you insurance. So you are out of gas, right? In other countries, it is a state-ran or a state by the actual
public.
It's a public-ran healthcare system like Switzerland and Canada and Germany. They have you were born, you're a citizen, you have health insurance automatically.
The whole tenure? Your whole tenure?
The whole time. There's no
Your whole
stipulations to
lifespan.
it.
The whole tenure on the earth.
Like your whole life. Your whole lifetime?
Your whole lifetime. If you get breast cancer, well, come on down and get this treatment. There's no one's asking you for a card. There's no card to get.
So it's like what you were saying at the beginning of the show. Ricardo made a comment about why can't we just walk in somewhere with our issues and just get treated?
Yeah, just
so apparently
get
treated. That
is your alternative. Your alternative is a free and open healthcare system.
But how is it paid for?
It's paid by your state and your federal tax dollars. So then we draw up our face on that. Then this is where they try to lose people. Don't be fooled by banners and balloons. Life ain't no crystal stair. You ain't know I got a little.
I'm about to use that. Don't be fooled by banners and balloons.
Because when's the last time you got a bill from the police department, or you got a bill from the fire department,
Facts.
or your postal service? Atlanta Watershed comes out all the time when they're fixing those roads. These are all public options. These are public servants. We don't like all the public servants. We just talked about that. Yeah. But these are all public servants. They all get checks. They all get very decent salaries. Okay.
Sometimes pensions.
Facts. Okay. But so it works the exact same way that we run all of those other services. Our roads, our streets, these are public services that we pay. I don't have to pay the street repair any money out of pocket. I don't write them a check. I pay with my dollars, my tax dollars, and then they do the job that they are supposed to do.
So what is the argument? Like, what is the legitimate argument for us not doing
propaganda,
replicating?
But explain it, because some of what you hear are the horror stories of, quote unquote, is that there's a long line outside of a clinic and everybody has to wait for 6 hours to get their their physical,
or that the good
like it's
doctors
just
will
overwhelmed.
So they're all these other other countries have been doing it forever. That's one. So if so they're doing it over there. That's one argument. Two, in that instance, wouldn't there be long lines now?
Facts.
We have health insurance. Most Americans have health insurance. Maybe 16% of African Americans don't have health care coverage, and part of that was eroded by the Affordable Health Care Act. But about 16% of African Americans don't have health insurance. When I roll down to my primary care provider, there's no long line. What long line? There is no long line. It's the same surgeries that we get here in the United States. You get those same surgeries in these other countries. In fact, look at every piece of technology that we use medically. Most of these things are surgeries that were performed in Switzerland or in Germany, and they of course brought those over here and of course increased the funds to them. I'll tell you what the disconnect is, or what the pushback is. Of course, is the lobbyists. There are plenty of people that want to keep things the same way. If I am a big insurance carrier and if I'm a huge insurance carrier, why would I want, no. I get paid.
The entire business, yeah.
Yeah, that's my business model.
So what does that look like overseas? What does their model for insurance companies look like? Or they just don't have them?
Why would they have insurance companies?
It's the government of Germany's insurance. That's it. That's
that makes a lot of sense. And actually know that some states, isn't insurance like a big part of their state economy anyway? Like I think we were talking about New Jersey. Some of the wealthiest industries in New Jersey, I think, is like the healthcare insurers, and so
yes. So and then you want to think about it in a second light. There are providers out there, and by providers I mean doctors and nurse practitioners, etc. That there's a fee for service model. Okay, not a quality of care model where I'm trying to make sure that you are healthy. There's a fee for service. So I think the saying is that there's no money in cures.
Ooh.
Right.
There's no money in cures.
Treatments.
There's money in treatments.
Right.
So the more times I can get you to come to the facility, the more insurance money I'm able to then collect. More insurance money, the richer I am, the more bonuses I get.
It also explains why I think there are delays now in terms of our care, because it's like going to the salon and finding out that 6 other people had it at 11:30. When you go to the doctor and you had an appointment time and you're still waiting for an hour, even though I had an appointment time, because they're trying to squeeze everybody in. Yeah, I never understood that.
Yeah.
Well, I do for fee for service now. I do understand it. Yeah,
Fee for service.
Obscene.
That makes sense.
But it's reality. They double book or triple book. They try to squeeze as many patients in as possible. That kind of feeds over to why we have disparities in healthcare, but I'll wait till that part comes up. But fee for service. We have a fee for service system, and we have an employee based system. So this is why we are in the predicament that we're in. And then whenever leaders like goodness gracious, what's that old man name?
What, Bernie?
Bernie, yeah, good old Bernie.
It's got to be Bernie.
Yeah, when you get people like that who are advocating for universal health care across the board, this is why he's getting pushback. You're going to get pushback by, of course, the Republican Party, whose pockets are being greased by big farm and who, what you want to make, you want to regulate. I sell hot sausages and, and salt and vinegar potato chips for $5. This is the fee for $5. I don't care if Mexico and Canada is selling for 25 cents. That ain't what I do over here. Okay, go to Mexico. But over here, this is what I sell: my hot sauces and chips.
God, every time you look at these things, the running theme seems to be dismantle systems. And you hear it, and you're just money. Like, what does that mean? And then when you have the conversation, you're like, why are we not doing that?
Well, another thing, too, to the exact point, in terms of the system, the cost of everything is so exorbitant as well. And that's another thing that I keep thinking about when you hear about some of these medical billing incidents where I think there was one of these examples, a woman came in, she just needed to be treated for something on her arm, I think, or her elbow, and she got an ice pack. And she got a bill for like over $300. And trying to understand just the cost of healthcare, I think one, in hospitals being able to set their own rates, I think one hospital had rubber gloves that were non-sanitized that were $53 each. But the sanitized rubber gloves were even more than that. So it's like, I also want to understand just the cost of providing care. Why is it so expensive? Why, when I go get a physical and I see what the insurance covered, why does that cost hundreds of dollars to put me on a scale and to take my height? Why is that expensive?
Because everything costs. As you mentioned, the gloves are $53.
But they're not $53.
I know they're not $53. But everything is upcharging in the United States. So I want you to think about one thing when they ask you about the price. Okay, most of our social butterflies, Instagram models, they go to what countries to get their surgeries?
Mexico,
yeah. Dominican Republic, okay, or sometimes in somebody's hotel room, but
under a bridge these days.
But why are they doing that? It's the same surgery here. You can go to Mexico and get your teeth fixed for $1,000. You know.
Who teeth? But who teeth are you getting when you go to Mexico?
Look, and see, there lies a misnomer. You're getting the exact same treatment
every place, or you have to go to the hospital.
You're going to board certified physicians in those countries. These aren't fly by nights. They have a healthcare system just like we have here. They have, but it's universal and doesn't cost as much. We, of course, tack on every other, again, like me being the candy man for the neighborhood. And now in my neighborhood, I'm charging everybody $3 more for this one can of soda. This is a check soda, sir. Check soda. $3.
That you paid 20 cents.
I can get 24 cases for $3. But that's what we do in the United States. The same medications that you get here, if you were to go over to Canada, if they're not free, they're only. I need you to stop.
What are you doing?
I need to get my medications in Canada and my dental work in Mexico. I sure do, because dental plans are total garbage.
Dental plans. I mean, think about even for a pregnancy. I'm not sure if any listeners are moms out there. But think about now when you get pregnant in the United States. When you get pregnant, how many days do you get off after the pregnancy?
Right.
Okay?
If any.
All right? In Switzerland, they will let you off with pay for up to 3 years.
What?
So you can rear your child.
So that you can rear your
3
child.
years, though?
Yeah.
Well, I want you to be home.
Paternity as well recently, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they must have a lot of daycares. You stay home for 3 years to take care of your child.
You don't need a lot of daycares.
You don't need a lot of daycare.
In that
That's
case.
the industry in itself. I mean, okay, well.
You don't know. We have
I would take advantage of it.
We have a capitalistic
You don't even like
and
kids.
still take 3
You don't even like
That's
kids.
what I'm saying. I would still take 3 years off work.
I'm about to say, you don't even like kids, so that's
anyway,
not even going to work.
But imagine what the difference that will make into your child.
For sure.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
For sure.
Here, our model here. We have a capitalistic society, so everyone is trying to make money. That pharmacy is going to make sure, or that farm company is going to make sure that this medicine is astronomical, and then of course that price has to then be bled over to the patient. The hospital has to pay a certain fee for it, and now the patient has to pay for it, and everybody has to get something on top.
I was going to say some of the side effects of that are, too, that just like the avoidance of it. Like I think the woman in New York in like 2017 or something like that had crushed her leg under a subway and told everyone not to call the ambulance. And onlookers were just like,
because that's $3,000.
What do you mean? But she's like, I can't afford an ambulance. And that is so true. That's why there's like women in labor hopping in the back of Ubers. And I think Uber had to come out and change their policies.
It's $3,000 that you have to pay out of pocket.
Right. It's not covered usually.
That is normally not covered.
Emergency rooms for emergencies.
Oh, Jesus, this is depressing. All right, so let's top 3 issues in healthcare. What would be your top 3
for
or
black
major
people?
ones? Yeah, for black folks in particular. What would be your top 3 major things?
Social economic disparities for the African American community, mistrust of in medicine, and implicit bias by our providers. So what I mean by social economic disparities, a lot of times in medicine, let me rephrase that. Big mama had high blood pressure.
Okay.
And mama had high blood pressure, so I got high blood pressure. It was passed down. No. Okay, stop the word passed down. We got to redefine the word passed down for black people because there's no actual scientific connection between race and some of these diseases. Now, unless you're talking about sickle cell anemia, everything else deals the underlying issue,
lifestyle,
right? Diabetes, heart disease, stroke, all these cardiovascular diseases that we have traditionally in the black community. It ain't passed down. These are things based off of our social and economic status within the United States. Half of our communities are in food deserts. Food deserts, black folks, is when you have to go 2 to 3 miles just to get fresh food, but you pass 17 fast food restaurants, Popeyes, Chick-fil-A, the Church's Chicken. Those are called food deserts. So I have no healthy options. All right, I was well into my 30s before I had asparagus and.
Oh Lord Christ on the cross!
I'm just saying, because the only greens I knew was greens.
Literally, that's. So wait, so are you?
You're so sad.
Only greens I knew was greens.
Wow.
And that had to have a pig in it.
You're from where are you from again?
Oregon.
Yeah, of course you know where a fresh fruit
Yes,
is. I mean,
that's
y'all
true.
probably pick them off a tree.
Yeah,
Come on.
trees everywhere.
Food desert
And
wasn't your
vegetables
problem.
everywhere.
So if it's not food deserts, that's the underlying issue with our health disparities. Then you're also talking about. I just mentioned that we have a economic based employees. We have employee based healthcare system. So we don't have access to healthcare. You don't have access to healthcare. So if mama only works 38 hours a week, she doesn't have health insurance. So if mama don't have health insurance, we ain't got health insurance.
Right.
I had to join the army to get my first dentist appointment. Wow.
Okay, so let me ask you a question before you move on. So are you saying that African Americans are not genetically predisposed to these things as well, or that's just not as big of an issue as they make it seem?
It's not as big of an issue unless you're talking about sickle cell anemia, which is actually your both parents have to have that trait, and that's how that child gets it. Things like stroke, diabetes, and cardiovascular disease; those things are things that are primarily affected by our community and how we're raised.
So they're byproducts.
They're byproducts. And then, of course, you can't even take out stress. Black people live under stress
since we're almost born.
All the time. Yeah. All the time. On the way up here, a police car got behind me. I'm stressed out. Stressed out. And I paid them warrants. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So it's all of those things that feed into that social economic disparity that we have. So if we can address that, then we can, of course, fix that one main problem. That's only one of 3, but one of those main problems. If you are listening to us, if your listeners are here in the state of Georgia, just take a look at, when I talk about access to healthcare, I want you to take a look at, if you Google the median income map for Atlanta.
Oh God, we've been constantly talking about that.
You talked about that, right?
Oh
And then of course, if you look over 285, that's $78,000 and above. But then if you look under I-20, you're talking about median income of what, 37 and below, up to I think $7,000 income, $10,000.
And we talking about full families with that level of income.
Then I want you to after you look at the median income, I want you to then look at Google hospitals near me, or Google healthcare facilities near me. And so before I came in today, I was like, because I like to do my research, I like to, because I like to know what I'm talking about.
And we appreciate that, because that's why you're here.
At minimum, I counted just from Google Maps alone 24 plus medical facilities above I-20. I counted 3 below 20.
Are you serious?
3. 3. So that was like
enough.
24 different places for me to go to get quality health care above 20.
Wow.
Even more once you start getting past
like
285.
75 like
right.
75 and stuff.
So that means, and think about like if mama is having a stroke or a heart attack, how I need to get to the advanced care as soon as possible. For me, if that means if you're living in South Fulton, I got to drive all the way to Grady in order to get That's 22 minutes.
Jesus.
Versus living in Alpharetta or in Dunwoody, where the Northside Hospital is right there.
Right.
That's a 10 minutes. So 22 minutes for a stroke or 10 minutes. Which one sounds better?
Right.
So we're talking about access to healthcare, and that's a part of the social economic disparity. Why aren't there more facilities down there? If we have the more disparities, then obviously that should be flipped. It's not. The second one, of course, is the
You're talking about mistrust,
Yeah. Mistrust in the community. We don't trust the healthcare system in the United States. And by we, even though I'm in healthcare, and I've been in healthcare since I was 17 years old, I don't still trust the motherfuckers sometimes. So you know what I'm saying?
And we're seeing that right now with
COVID-19, with the vaccination. Yeah. You're seeing it right now. I know we use the Tuskegee syphilis study.
That's the big one.
That's the big one. But I brought in my book, the book, Medical Apartheid. If you read that one, then you wouldn't even talk about Tuskegee study anymore, because there's tons of other examples aside from the Tuskegee syphilis study, where they weren't even giving us anything. This was a study based off of them withholding the cure and letting us just die naturally.
So we were the herd immunity example first out the gate.
So there's so many instances of mistrust that it's very hard for Black people to trust the healthcare system. If I don't trust you, then I'm not going to listen to you. So adherence to healthcare. Secondly, if I don't have insurance, that means I don't have a primary.
Right.
Even if your primary is a white man, if your doctor's a white male, and you're a Black woman, it's very difficult for you to then build a trust with that individual if you don't see them all the time. I can't see you because I ain't got no insurance.
Right.
Most of them, I went to the doctor. No, you went to the emergency room. Your emergency room.
Wow.
I'm just saying. So, and then that last one, of course,
their bias.
Yeah, implicit bias.
Yeah.
So even when you do have health insurance, even when you do have a great job and you're going to see those providers, you have to remember that sometimes providers have implicit bias. And guys, when I say providers, I mean like nurse practitioners, doctors, whatever, who are working. Sometimes they have their own implicit bias. Just because they have MD behind their name doesn't mean that they don't
have preconceived notions.
They have preconceived notions about you. So there's already studies out there of their treatment to Black patients and how they two patients with the exact same symptoms coming from the exact same background, but one is Black and one is white, and how they will treat the other one worse than the other one. Well, she's not adhering to medicine, so I'm just gonna go and let her go. Or there was actually a study in 2015, a survey done on 222 white second year physicians. They were second year in school, and they thought that Black people felt pain at a
I was going to ask about pain management, because we hear about that all the time.
Slave ships, of course.
But there are so many.
Pain.
Well, that's a lie and a half.
That's a lie.
I mean, I'm saying.
But I've read about that as well. And Harvard even did a study, like an empathy sort of study. And I wonder if it's not the same muscles that, like, when they hear or have a Black patient who is telling them that this is a 10 or not, but they don't see it. They don't recognize it.
They don't recognize it, and they send you home. And so when that happens, why should I go back? They didn't believe me in the first time.
Right.
Or, their mama get back home, child, the doctor sent me home. So they said, I'm fine. They just said, take some aspirin. And then she died, a couple of days later, or the symptoms never treated. So, and that comes from implicit bias.
For sure.
Oh, good Lord.
So one of the things I was going to say too is that it looks so strange, even from broad-based, because you said it's state by state, that it's so different in other places, even in the same country. It's so crazy to see that. And I was looking up the rankings for access. There's lots of different rankings, I think, for healthcare by state. But like the states at the bottom were Georgia, Alabama, North Carolina, like those culprits, those likely suspects. Virginia was toward the bottom. I don't know if Georgia Georgia may have been the very bottom for access anyway.
We're at the bottom a lot.
Literally.
Yeah. And it's just so strange to think that like in one country there could be such a huge difference and like such a big gap. But again, it's healthcare, so even if it was open and it was totally universal, they act as though it would be abused in the sense that people would like abuse getting free Chick-fil-A or something. Like it's health. What am I going to do? Get extra shots because it's free? Right. Like who's going to do that? It's like I think the least possible system to abuse. And even if when it was open, there would obviously be lots of education that had to be done. There are still lots of people who don't like, again, either for mistrust purposes or for mistrust purposes, in our community, but also outside of that, because I think there's also data around men and how often men seek treatment.
Yeah,
versus
black
women,
men are just not. It's not.
or seek prevention treatment.
All right, so we're down to the last couple of minutes. Solutions. How can we fix? I mean, of course, it sounds like it needs a complete overhaul, but that's in the meantime, how can we fix some of these things?
My first bullet point, because I figured you would ask that, is vote. You have to vote.
Why? As it pertains to healthcare, why does that make a difference?
As it pertains to healthcare, because healthcare is state run. A hospital can't be built without state approval. Insurance, as you saw with the Affordable Health Care Act, the reason why some people couldn't get it was because the certain states would not expand Medicaid. Or Medicare for their citizens. Georgia being one of those states, so it left people in that gap. So we have to fill that gap with hopefully maybe universal health care. That will help fill that gap, which will provide more people to have access. Secondly, to maybe tackle the implicit bias that they feel. Say something. Everyone can't afford an attorney. All right, I know we like I'm gonna sue.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm like,
all
man.
right?
Yeah.
Well, everyone can't afford an attorney, but anyone can write a letter. There's a CMO of every hospital, a chief medical officer. You can write that person a letter, letting them know that your experience and your symptoms. Get a second opinion.
Great advice.
You and then of course, if you don't get an answer from the CMO, then they all have certifications. All right, the same way that you complain at Chick-fil-A when they ain't got your Polynesian sauce. All right. That's the okay. And then we need to encourage our children because this has to be a generational thing. Encourage your children to go into the sciences because there is. I did my study on the lack of representation in African American leadership for African Americans in healthcare. While there's plenty of nurses. There's plenty of doctors. We need more. They need more black doctors. They need more people in representation because adherence to care directly correlates with the relationship that you have with your provider.
That's true.
If I can understand where you're coming from and I can understand you as a person, then I'm more likely to actually do what you tell me to, and I'll trust what you're saying. And then lastly, we need to read. All right, do your research. Get COVID. They ain't about to put no microchip in me.
Okay.
Government ain't about to track me.
How many times I've heard this microchip story? Do you have any idea how many times?
Literally.
But you on child support.
And the memory erasure.
You on child support. The government already know where you are. You know what I'm saying? You smoke weed from the plug. You don't even know. So that's what I'm saying. If you are going to be combative about this, I think I heard you on the last podcast stating you have reservations because you haven't seen the efficacy over long periods of time or the side effects. That is a plausible reason versus microchipping and the government following you.
I think Maya said that.
When you owe the IRS.
I don't think I said that.
I'm sorry.
You're not about to
No, it's okay.
You're about to
I'm just saying, I don't think I said that.
Okay, yeah, but you know what I mean. But
I pled the fifth, if I recall. But no,
Yeah.
but no, I hear you, and I also appreciate you making the point about writing the letter because I know that, and I learned inadvertently that advocating for yourself in healthcare is very important. I don't think anybody understands how to do that or why they would do that or that it occurs to them because they're experts. You're a patient, and I don't think people understand how important that is. And it was not intuitive to me as an advocate, as my job, that to a certain extent, you do have to advocate for yourself when you're getting treatment and when you need treatment.
In this instance, I employ all of my black people to be white women. I need to speak to the manager, please. I need the manager, please. In this instance, if you're not sure about the treatment plan, if you feel that that your provider is giving you some type of bias, they're not treating your pain appropriately. Every facility has a CMO, a chief medical officer. They also have a chief nursing officer if it came from the nursing staff. Report that up, and if you don't get the answers that you need, or in that instance, then you can go above them because there are certification bodies that accredit all the facilities and the licenses that those individuals have. Treat them just like you treat any fast food restaurant worker.
Amen.
All right. I know I learned something today. That happens every blue moon. But I actually learned something today, and I'm that thing. Special thanks to our guest on today, Dr. J. Bush. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you.
Any final thoughts?
Everything that we've already talked about. Again, the session has closed, but there will be developments over the summer, so hopefully we'll keep meeting and keep getting into those. But this has been highly educational in lots of areas. And I hope you come back so we can talk about even more stuff, because we really didn't even get into that place that most people are in, that I'm in, that most people are in, I think, in which you can have insurance and still find that it's way too expensive.
Yeah.
And still find yourself on a subsequent prayer plan that you just can't afford to be sick. I just can't afford to
Jesus.
Yeah. So I would love to talk more about that too.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
All right. So as a reminder and a notice, we are the television show, the Leadership Blend television show is in our Black Men's Panel series. So that'll be displaying starting Thursday, and we're talking about education with voices that have been here before, Attorney Frank Davis, Jason B. Allen, and Dr. Shelton Good, voices you've all heard on here before. They're collectively giving their ideas, and we're talking about issues and concerns in education for minorities, and that'll be on Image of a Man Network starting on Thursday at 10 a.m. and 5 p.m. so you can catch it twice because it's that nice. And we'll see you guys on next Friday, same time, same place on Leadership Blend Live podcast with your host, Ricardo D. Rice.